Whether it be born from nostalgia of a simplicity and ignorance to the world lost to time, a desire to assert intellectual dominance in a battle of the brains, a wanton to gain and expand upon existing knowledge or skills, or an admiration of a form of expression through sight, sound and taste, we become very familiar with certain things in the world around us as our brains latch onto information. Some even make it their mission to express their passion for their chosen forte, be it for fun, debate, or speculation, and goddamn there's a lot of it. This is one such mission. In these videos I select a chosen entity and go over background information, some trivia, and what my thoughts are on them. Be it a character, property, story, item, even possibly a concept. Call it a retrospective, call it a review, hell, call it a rant or a ramble. I call it shedding a personal light on it. I'm a Spectrum D, but you may also call me Lewis. Feel free to join me as I cast a spotlight on Super Mario Galaxy for the Nintendo Wii. Welcome to the Fiction Forge. Published and released by Nintendo and directed by Yoshiaki Koizumi in 2007, Super Mario Galaxy is a 3D, third-person action platformer that makes heavy use of the Wii Remote's motion controls for aiming and dynamic actions, and a mix of inputs from the Wii Remote and Nunchuck for basic character movement. A sequel released in 2010 titled Super Mario Galaxy 2 was released for the same console, followed by a port of the original game as part of the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection for the Nintendo Switch in 2020. Oddly enough, the aforementioned sequel was not included in any capacity alongside the triad of preceding platformer ports. This game sees Mario taking off into outer space, hopping from galaxy to galaxy in an effort to save Princess Peach Toadstool. This isn't the first time Mario's seen the stars in the series' history, but it is the first instance of space being the main setting for a game. In terms of character control, Mario has access to pretty much all of his commonplace movement abilities from previous outings in the Z-axis. He has standard long and triple jumps, a ground pound, a crouch and a backflip. He does have something akin to a crawl, but it's not like an actual one, like in Super Mario 64. In terms of new options, Mario can spin upon the player shaking the Wii Remote, allowing him to break crystals, damage enemies, pick up and fire shells, and launch from sling stars and launch stars. Ground pounding while shaking said remote allows Mario to home in on enemies close enough to him. Like the majority of entries in the Super Mario Bros. Series, this title doesn't have a particularly deep narrative, or at least, not on the surface. The game opens to an introduction to the centennial celebration that is the Star Festival, presented in the form of a storybook with pages flipped by players pressing A on the Wii Remote. Following this, the player is greeted with a letter to Mario from Peach, much like the beginning of Super Mario 64. The letter extends an invitation for Mario to join Peach for the festival, as well as the promise of a gift of some sort from her. Mario is then shown enthusiastically making his way to the Mushroom Kingdom Center before the footage fades out and then into gameplay. At first, the brisk power walk is pleasant and whimsical as the aptly named track, The Star Festival, plays in the background. The festivities are cut rather short when, as expected, Bowser's forces invade the castle grounds, both causing property damage and freezing Toads in some sort of crystallized state. As Bowser presents himself before Peach, Mario darts and dodges his way to the castle. The King of the Koopas creates an electric charge and summons a flying saucer of some description to carve out the radius of Peach's castle, then a set of his own ships to chain themselves to the ground and lift the castle into the air, then into space. Mario is just able to make it to the bridge and hold on as Peach calls for him. Unfortunately, just as he catches his breath, somehow, it's explained in the second entry that the Luma with Mario is helping him breathe, but that doesn't explain pre-adventure Mario or Peach and Kamek. Bowser's magical minion appears and launches Mario off into the far reaches of space, with a destructive spell that takes out part of the bridge. Peach fruitlessly calls out again as everyone disappears. Sometime later, Mario awakens on a small planetoid, greeted by a small, rotund, star-shaped creature. Said creature then turns itself into a rabbit and initiates a game of hide and seek with him. After playing around with the creature and two of its peers, Mario is led to a then new character and mother of the star creatures, Rosalina. An agreement is made. In exchange for hers and the creature's help saving Peach, Mario is to help them look for grand stars and power stars, being a source of fuel for the game's main hub, the Comet Observatory. After recovering their first grand star, Rosalina explains the situation fully and the search begins. At a base level, this doesn't change. The player does save Luigi, Captain Toad and his peers, but other than that, the story is just a larger scale go save the princess from Bowser story, and it remains that way until the end of the game. Until a black hole is created following Bowser's defeat, the universe is effectively rebooted, and Rosalina gives Mario a lesson on life cycles. She's also apparently really big during this. It's also worth noting briefly that upon completing the game 100% with Mario, the player can play again with Luigi and switch between the brothers when selecting a file. However, if the player visits the library dome every so often, or all at once at the end if that's their thing, Rosalina is seen reading chapters of a book of her own to the Lumas, a story that sees a little girl coming into contact with a lost baby alien and the journey the pair embark on to find the latter's mother, with the former having no known family of her own after losing her mother an undisclosed time before. As they go, they meet more of these creatures, and have to expand upon their small spacecraft to facilitate the growing guest numbers. By the end, both the girl, now grown up, and the first Luma come to accept that they likely won't find its biological mother. But that isn't so bad. They already have a new, bigger family to travel with as new Lumas come and go. As a result of this journey to find one Luma's mother, the young woman would become the adopted mother to so many more. The only ambition she had at the end of it all was to revisit her home planet once every 100 years. While it's never explicitly said in text, the imagery in Rosalina's storybook practically confirms that this is an illustration of her own experiences, of her past. This story has made a fan favorite for many, including myself, but this story wasn't actually part of the game's original plan. Koizumi wrote it himself behind everyone's backs. Aspects of Rosalina, like her seemingly long life despite appearing human and her planned relation to Peach, are often discussed, but neither have been built upon officially as of this video's production. And likely shan't be, though I'm open to being wrong. Before I end this video off, let's go through my personal feelings about the game and some criticisms I have. We'll start off with the positives. In regards to the gameplay, I recently hooked up my Wii and revisited the game with the primary goal of refamiliarizing myself with the feeling of controlling Mario, and it's still mostly pretty solid, I'd say. I also quite enjoy simply screwing around with the red star, which also controlled pretty well, and flying around the observatory. I find it surprising that it's not an item that's made any sort of reappearance since its introduction. Another aspect that leans in this entry's favour is its soundtrack, which is performed by a live orchestra. Well done to the composers, Koji Kondo and Mohito Yakota, the conductor, Koji Haishima, and the Super Mario Galaxy Orchestra for their performance. Some of my personal favourites include the Star Festival, Rosalina in the Observatory, particularly number 2, Purple Coins, and the Library. Additionally, in my eyes, Galaxy's depiction of the Mushroom Kingdom and the castle grounds is the best one. It actually looks like a kingdom connected to the outside world. It's not just a castle in the middle of nowhere like many other depictions. Unfortunately, we now move on to the cons I have with the game, or at least what they could have built upon or done differently, though it is a bit late, given how many years later it is. We begin with the previously mentioned Red Star. Seeing as it isn't a post-story item, I think it could have had its own Power Star levels in the Dome's galaxies. perhaps an aerial equivalent to the underwater shell stars. One would arguably have better control, seeing as the A button stops the player and allows them to adjust their angle. While we're on the topic of items, I think the Fire Flower could have been handled differently. The Fire Flower is a series staple, so having it be timed when aiming and firing the shots correctly can be a challenge in of itself is mildly infuriating. To compensate for the lack of a timer, I think losing the power-up upon taking damage sounds like a fair price to pay. Finally, while I maintain the opinion that Galaxy is a good game and one of my favourites if I had to bestow the title, I will say that I'm envious of those who got to play it as part of the free game collection on the original Switch. Playing the Wii version for extended periods does a number on one's wrist, and not having to rely on forced motion controls would make me like it more, I think. To sum my feelings up, Super Mario Galaxy is a good-looking, well-playing game that stands among my favourites to revisit, and houses some of my favourite compositions in the Super Mario Bros. Series, and I shall likely continue to come back to it for years to come. Well, I think that's it if I'm honest. I don't think there's anything more I can say without repeating myself somehow. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more from us, do be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, enable notifications for when we upload, and join the Discord if you'd like to talk to us or generally discuss things like this. Also, I have streamed this game on my personal Twitch channel a couple of times, so do visit that if you'd like to catch me live, whenever that may be, or my YouTube channel if you'd like to catch the VOD. With that all being said, this has been A Spectrum D with the Fiction Forge, and until next time, fare thee well.